but that is our first indication that this is a protest of some kind on the Bay Bridge right now. And it clearly hasn't been resolved.
Right. We can see from that Caltrans still image, we counted about 6 vehicles there, looked like about 6 people or so, and that's the image off to the right-hand side of the screen, so you can see them. And then also, you know, it's just kind of insult to injury here for people that do need to commute into the city, because there was already 1 lane down due to APEC being in town in the westbound direction and 1 lane closed in the eastbound direction. So that was already in place this week. Now you have this, and for people that are on the bridge or in the maze, unfortunately, there is no opportunity to turn around. So they will be there until these lanes reopen, whenever that may be. We have not been given any sort of update from the CHP in terms of if arrests have been made, if they're working on at least getting 1 lane open. We know that when we saw the protests unfold yesterday, a lot of the signage said ceasefire now, free Palestine. That's been essentially the theme of the demonstrations we've seen throughout the week. We, again, have not been able to confirm if that is what this protest is about on the bridge, but we, of course, are working to get some of that information for you as this all unfolds. But the big note here, traffic is stopped. And Reggie, I'm sitting here thinking to myself the last time we might have seen traffic stopped like this on the bridge with all lanes blocked for longer than just a few minutes. And I'm going back to a major crash we had in 2019 that was deadly on the bridge. We did have something earlier this year with an unfortunate deadly incident on the bridge. But again, those are situations where there's a crash involved and they're working to clean it up and move it. Having a protest on the bridge is a different story, because at this point, we're not able to tell how many people are up there blocking the traffic, who else is involved. Are there people in the backup that may be a part of the protest too that are working to get up there as well? There's so many other elements that could unfold.
And I think a lot of us were wondering, was there going to be some sort of bridge action this week from APEC? The last time we really saw something like that was at the Golden Gate Bridge. And that was years ago when the Beijing Olympics were happening and they had the torch coming through San Francisco, and there were some protesters on that bridge. But this time around, it looks like protesters have picked the Bay Bridge, which of course is a major commuter headache for folks this morning. And again, BART would be a good idea. So would the ferry, if you are somewhere where you can take that this morning. BART just reported this morning that they have not seen higher than usual numbers this week. They kind of thought / hoped that they would, and that people would be ditching their cars and not coming into the city. But it actually appears as if more people have just decided to stay home. It
does. And Reggie, now we're getting word that the Golden Gate Bridge is shut down as well due to protesters.
Okay, well, I spoke too soon. Now both bridges coming to San Francisco.
We have that camera.
Yeah, are we able to get an image of the Golden Gate Bridge? Okay, so this is the image coming from.
Bridge? Okay,
now
so
this is the Bay Bridge.
Yep.
Says ceasefire. This is also a Caltrans camera coming from the eastbound 80 side of the bridge. And I'm wondering what what look like white little squares, sheets are on the ground as well.
I'm guessing that it's sort of like
an indication
like a death
of
inn, like where they are representing people who have died and are laying on the bridge in order to protest.
All right, so this is a better look at the images that are coming from the Bay Bridge. Again, if you're just joining us, all westbound lanes are stopped right now due to protesters on the bridge. You can see it now. Ceasefire now. And this is the same theme of the protests that we've watched throughout the week. I'm trying to think of the impact that it's going to have, and we're seeing from our traffic sensors.
And I was looking at our traffic data on your computer, and now the backup on 80 is now in El Sobrante.
Okay.
So you know that's very far back.
Yes.
And it also looks like the westbound span of the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge is now getting backed up as people probably try and divert onto that bridge.
And that bridge is already having a problem because the Sigler, we are in week 6 of 3 lanes being closed on the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, which has been an ongoing problem for over a month now due to an earlier fiery crash that happened back in October. So that's been a big problem spot. So for anyone that is thinking that might be your alternate, be aware that that bridge has been having an ongoing issue. So your best alternate, if you're in your car and streaming us right now, honestly would be to go around the other way over the San Mateo Bridge, where we aren't seeing any delays in that spot right now.
I don't know if we could take the main, I guess the South Beach camera, but I just noticed that going eastbound to Oakland, you can probably see how slow the traffic is coming out of San Francisco. Even though that's not actually the side where the protesters are, there is a police presence on that side, plus I'm sure people are looking at the protests. So you'll see, if you look at the bottom part of your screen, how slowly those taillights are moving. And this is why I'm saying you don't really want to go in either direction on the Bay Bridge, even though it's actually the westbound side that is closed down right now. Do we have pictures of the Golden Gate Bridge that we can show?
Because I can see this Golden Gate Bridge camera out the corner of my eye, and right now it does look like traffic is moving. So there might be demonstrators there, but traffic is moving on the Golden Gate Bridge.
Okay.
So they might be on the pedestrian walkway portions of the Golden Gate, but the Golden Gate is fine from our visual here, and this is a live camera showing you that issue. But back to the Bay Bridge, so let's get into some alternates for you if you do need to come into the city. And we are starting to see a lot more vehicles pass through from our South Beach camera. You can see here off the right-hand side, but what's unclear is if that might be traffic coming from, say, Treasure Island in that area, because you can get off of the island in the center past the tunnel. This is all traffic before you go through the tunnel in the westbound direction. And I'm not seeing anybody move, so I can only assume that that's where those vehicles that you see on the right-hand side of the screen are coming from. So in terms of alternates, important to note, the BART is running their normal schedule this week. They were hoping to have higher than normal volume of passengers due to APEC. That actually did not come to fruition. We learned that this morning from their data, but they are running their normal service and actually have elongated trains because they were expecting more people to ride this week. So there's a lot of space for you available there. You also can take the ferry from Alameda, also Jack London Square. So those are two options. This is all for our westbound commuter group. You can also, now Drew pointed this out because he's seeing that traffic back up to El Sobrante. A lot of people I know would probably assume, oh, let me hop on the Richmond San Rafael Bridge. But that bridge is not in great shape right now if you're traveling in the westbound direction due to an ongoing SIG alert, 6 weeks of that issue. There are 3 westbound lanes blocked there. And also important to note that no wide load vehicles are allowed on that bridge right now, so that's a problem. So your best bet if you are in your car would likely be to go on the San Mateo Bridge, which we know is very much out the way, but that is the best option, or to turn around, go home, and take mass transit, because you can get from the West Oakland BART station to the Embarcadero station in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I was just reading the log from Caltrans. They are requesting tow trucks to get these cars off the bridge, but imagine how they're going to get there.
I see. So the only thing they would be able to do is take the emergency shoulder on the right-hand side, which I wonder how that impact will go as well, because that lane is closed due to APEC off to the far right-hand side. But they could
maybe they'll allow them in that track.
Yeah.
I don't know. So they're trying to get tow trucks to get those cars out of that area, because there are several cars that we can see from that webcam image from Caltrans. So that was the latest from the log that we're reading, is that they have requested tow trucks. So there you can see, it looks like on, if I'm correct, it looks like there is one tow truck there already.
Yes.
On the left lane. They're requesting obviously more of them because there are more than a single car blocking this. So that's obviously going to take some time to get more tow trucks into this region. But if you're familiar with the Bay Bridge Toll Plaza, there are tow trucks sitting right there for this exact reason. Not necessarily a protest, but if a car breaks down,
they have to move it.
They got to move it fast. So.
Yeah, because that's the kind of impact that will happen. You know, traffic can just become so bad if there's any sort of disruption on the bridge. And we already know that we're going to see the effects of this. It's been going now for at least 20 to 30 minutes at this point. Reggie first noticed the lack of traffic on the western span of the bridge around 7:45. It is already 8:08. So every minute counts when you are looking at the impacts of the bridge and closures there. So if you're just joining us, what you're seeing is a still image from a Caltrans camera showing the protesters on the bridge blocking traffic. It says ceasefire now, obviously in reference to the conflict going on right now between Hamas and Israel. And that is the theme of the protests that we have seen throughout the week. And this is not going to be good for people that are in that backup, unfortunately.
They are actually broadcasting this on their Facebook page. So I'm seeing now a close-up view of what it looks like.
Oh, from the protesters. Okay.
And so there are a number of them who are out of their vehicles and they are linked together with some kind of like metal tube. I don't know if it's metal, but some kind of tube. And that way it kind of creates a human chain between the vehicles. And then there is also someone who is shouting something from a megaphone, but I can't hear it. But the banners, you see the big banner that we were looking at from above, but then the banners that they're holding that face people on the bridge say, stop the genocide and the support, the military aid. So that appears to be their message today.
And it looks like there's a fair amount of people there. It's a little harder to tell from the
There's also a lot of
overhead
police behind them too, so it's a bit hard to tell who's with them and who back here is
an officer responding. Right, because the one thing that police do have the option to do is drive in reverse onto the bridge. So it looks like they drove going the opposite direction of traffic onto the western span of the bridge so that they could meet up with these protesters, because obviously getting through that backup is nearly impossible. So they're there. Reggie does have this live stream going from, what is this, Facebook, Reggie?
Yeah.
Where they're streaming this. And the stream is coming from the protesters. We're able to just see it here on the desk of what they're doing on the bridge right now. And again, we've talked a lot about the western span and also westbound traffic, but notes for people that are traveling in the eastbound direction. You still very much have the option to take BART as well. You can take the ferry. You can travel right down here to the ferry building up the street off of the Embarcadero, which, by the way, is back open and moving between Battery and Broadway due to the closure from yesterday following President Biden's event and the continuous party and Gwen Stefani concert at the Exploratorium. That has all been cleared up, so you shouldn't be afraid to come down this area. We do have a little blockage. It looks like one lane going towards the Fisherman's Wharf area is still filled with some work vehicles as they work to clear out the area, but overall things are moving down here on the Embarcadero in San Francisco. So if you have any interest in taking the ferry in and you want to go from the ferry building, that is an option for you, not too far away.
This group that is staging this protest claims that they have more than 200 Bay Area residents as a part of this Bay Bridge shutdown today. And they sent out a news release saying that they are demanding that President Biden call for an immediate ceasefire and end U.S. military aid to Israel, which is essentially what the banners are saying that I could see on their live stream.
Okay, I'm seeing this now too. And now we have a little bit more clarity on what looked like, at least from overhead, those white squares. They are holding what they're calling a, quote, die-in. Reggie referenced those 200 people that they say they have up there on the bridge, and that the white sheets are covering the bodies, and with placards that read, quote, 11,000 dead. So that's what they're seeing on the bridge right now, and we weren't able to get a ton of clarity on because of the, I would say, pixelation of the image from overhead, but that's what it is. So they have a lot of data that they're citing here coming from the health ministry, also Al-Shifa Hospital, which we've been reporting on extensively this morning because Israel has taken control of that area and claims that Hamas has tunnels underneath that hospital in Gaza. So there's a lot to unpack here, but it's what we expected in terms of the demonstration. What we did not expect is for all of westbound traffic to be shut down on the Bay Bridge this morning.
And, you know, make no mistake, even though this is an economic summit that is happening here in San Francisco with so many Asian countries, we have to remember that, you know, the leader of the free world is here, the vice president is here, the secretary of state is here.
Absolutely.
And certainly the secretary of state, while we may not be seeing a discussion in front of cameras about Israel, a discussion about Gaza, there are certainly discussions that are happening behind the scenes with these Asian leaders and Secretary of State Antony Blinken. That is for sure happening. So it's an opportunity for these groups who have something to say about Palestinians and Israelis and what our role is in this conflict. It's a huge opportunity for them to speak up.
And there's no way that the president and vice president are not aware, at the very least, that this is happening right now. I mean, the vice president knows this area quite well. This used to be her home, so she knows the kind of impact that this just has, one, on the day-to-day citizens trying to get to where they're trying to go and to work and et cetera, but also the broader conversation that the American people are speaking, and loudly, because this is effective. It worked. They have stopped traffic at the most critical commute hour. So lots of people are now tuning in, trying to figure out what's going on, and maybe protesters' hope is to offer some education or at least some insight into what they're doing there. So that is this is going to be a tough one for people that are in their cars right now.
If you are just, you know, clicking onto our stream now, we are covering what is happening on the Bay Bridge, and you may have seen the headline on your phone sent to you that we just sent out a few minutes ago. You don't want to go on the Bay Bridge, period, right now, because even in the direction toward Oakland, westbound, it's very slow.
And here's a direct...
Sorry, eastbound, it's very slow.
Yeah.
Westbound, it's totally shut down. So going from Oakland to San Francisco is a no-go on the Bay Bridge, and I would definitely, if I were you, avoid getting on in San Francisco to try to get to Oakland, because it's just not going very quickly.
No. I have a quote here from one of the members of the group that is on the bridge right now. It says, quote, "We are beyond grief watching thousands of our loved ones murdered by Israeli military. There is a genocide happening in Gaza, and President Biden is hosting cocktail parties in San Francisco right now." And that's from Aisha Nizar with the Palestinian Youth Movement. It goes on to say, quote, "We refuse to stand by as our elected officials pay for and cheer on the genocide of Palestinians. Biden must call for a ceasefire now," end quote. And again, that quote is coming from someone with the Palestinian Youth Movement that is a part of this protest on the Bay Bridge right now. And also, for anyone joining us and you are thinking about what are my options, I need to get into San Francisco. BART is going to be the easiest. Running normal schedule right now, and trains are about 10 to 15 minutes apart, so you should be able to get through pretty quickly. And they are also running longer trains than normal if you're worried about a crowding issue due to what's happening there. BART was already prepping for more passengers because of APEC this week, and people, according to BART, aren't really using it. So that means that there's a lot of space available to you now. If you need to hit the roadways to get into the city, your options for bridges are going to be the San Mateo Bridge and the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge. The Richmond-San Rafael Bridge is going to be a problem because it is facing an ongoing SIGLR in week 6 of that. So there are 3 westbound lanes closed on 580. So this is the backup here on the right-hand side of the screen from the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, so you can know what to expect there. Not a pretty picture. At last check, the backup as you approach the bridge there was over 4 miles long. And also, wide load vehicles are not allowed on the bridge due to those lane closures in that area. And that's not going to reopen today for sure. If you want to go the opposite way to the San Mateo Bridge, there are no delays there. other than just your usual commute hours. So this is a live picture from the San Mateo Bridge. So you know what you're looking at. Off to the right-hand side is the westbound traffic, and it's moving. So that could be for you, especially say if you're someone traveling from Oakland, but you're more towards the south side, going towards, say, San Leandro or San Lorenzo, Hayward, of course. This would be the better option rather than traveling towards the Bay Bridge.
I guess the question is how this is going to end, because it doesn't appear, and I'm seeing this, I'm looking on Facebook at the live stream from the protesters, and it doesn't seem like they're moving at all. The police are certainly there, but they're not moving in. So right now we have a bit of a standoff. And
you know, it's interesting you say that they aren't moving in, Reggie, because I think we even saw that a little bit yesterday in our coverage of the protest, where we saw people rather forcefully moving towards some members of APEC going in for meetings, and the police officers not really intervening. Now, they had to intervene here because this is now causing an issue for the general public.
Right.
And then you get into conversations about, we saw this happen when, for example, at the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge a couple years ago, when those cement blocks were falling, if you remember that.
Oh, right,
and everything came to a standstill. People ran out of gas. People had other problems, and it's very easy in a backup to maybe even rear end someone because it's a lot of stop and go, or people put themselves in park, etc. I believe there might have even at that time been some sort of minor medical emergency that happened in the backup. So those are all the things that are at play as well that need to be considered. So getting the lanes open will be critical, and we are seeing emergency vehicles again on the right-hand side of the screen going up the shoulder of the bridge, trying to get through. And I can also see some personal vehicles. I wonder if people are trying to drive up and just see what's happening. But I can tell you right now, you're not going to get through.
Right. I am curious about the intention or just the orders that police have, because going into this, you'll remember that Police Chief Bill Scott and also the mayor said that, of course, protests would be allowed because it's, your right to do so. But if it threatened people's safety, that's when police would intervene. This doesn't technically threaten people's safety. This threatens people's commute, and it's extremely inconvenient.
Yes. Yes.
So,
because it's not a weight issue. We know the Bay Bridge can handle a lot of weight. After the earthquake, it was designed to sway and hold a lot. So that's not a safety problem if anyone is thinking, oh, with all these cars stopped on the bridge. No, no, no. That's fine. It's just...
It's a matter of decision-making
right.
and what they want that image to be.
Yeah.
Because so far, look, there have been a few arrests. We don't have a total number in San Francisco, but from our reporters on the ground watching, it's been very low.
Right.
There were, I think, a couple of arrests last night in front of the Exploratorium because apparently some of the protesters were getting a little too close for comfort into people's faces. But as Jabina mentioned yesterday, there was a whole action happening that shut down near 5th and Mission to try and make it harder for people to get to APEC at Moscone Center. And there was some real aggressive behavior that was happening from some of these protesters with police and also with attendees of APEC. And for the most part, police were diffusing the situation and allowing the two sides of these conflicts to just walk away from each other. An exception did happen yesterday, because I saw this on the Chronicle. There was a protester who was yelling and screaming at a person who was involved in APEC, and allegedly that person involved in the APEC conference punched this woman in the face, and then she fell onto the ground. That resulted in an arrest. That was violent. That was putting someone's safety in danger. This right now doesn't meet that threshold, so I'm not sure how or when the police will intervene and stop this. But
right. And just some more words from the folks that are on the bridge right now, these demonstrators saying, Quote, President Biden is in San Francisco this week, along with Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of State Antony Blinken, to meet with world leaders from across the Asia Pacific as they gather for the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. Of course, we've been calling it APEC all week, that summit. At the APEC summit, Indonesian President Joko Widodo strongly urged President Biden to help bring about a ceasefire, end quote. And these people are standing in solidarity with Indonesian President Joko Widodo. Again, some other quotes and some information about the people there on the bridge. They call themselves a multiracial group of Bay Area residents locking arms and unfurling a banner reading, quote, Biden-Harris, cease fire now, across all lanes of traffic, while 200 people held die-ins, is what they're calling it, where essentially they have white sheets over their bodies with placards that read, quote, 11,000 bodies, or excuse me, 11,000 dead, in reference to the lives that have been lost in the war between Israel and Hamas. We also have here a quote from one of the Palestinian Youth Movement members. It reads, quote, we are beyond grief watching thousands of our loved ones murdered by the Israeli military. There is a genocide happening in Gaza, and President Biden is hosting cocktail parties in San Francisco right now, end quote. This is from Aisha Nizar with the Palestinian Youth Movement. It says, quote, we refuse to stand by as our elected officials pay for and cheer on the genocide of Palestinians. Biden must call for a ceasefire now. And you can clearly see that ceasefire banner lying across the lanes in the westbound direction on the Bay Bridge, and no movement whatsoever for westbound traffic. We also are seeing people move, but very slowly in the eastbound direction. So this is a reminder to, if you can think of anyone, you know, a friend, a neighbor, a colleague that travels eastbound on the Bay Bridge as a part of their normal commute, that it would likely be best to avoid it as well for two reasons. One, there's such a heavy police presence and traffic is well under the limit as you're making your way into the East Bay, so it's going to take you a lot longer. But also because with these kinds of demonstrations, you just don't know what'll happen. So it's just best to avoid it if you can. And BART is an option. The ferry is an option. If you thought, maybe let's just go into the office on Thursday, I could work from home on Friday, maybe today's the day that you work from home and go into the office tomorrow, because we are checking in with the CHP. We have our colleagues upstairs giving calls and no updates whatsoever, aside from them calling in additional tow trucks to try and get these vehicles out of the way up there. This is also a good time to remind you that we already had bad traffic on the bridge in some respects due to the lane closure, that single lane closure, one down in the westbound direction, one down in the eastbound direction already due to APEC. And those lanes were not projected to open until 9 p.m. tomorrow. So you already had things not amazing, but it wasn't too bad because, as Reggie has stated throughout our live coverage of this, that a lot of people had been heeding the warning to stay home, work from home. Traffic was incredibly light in the city, and now we have a live camera on the bridge. Our colleague Lena Howland has now reached the bridge, and it looks like she is approaching. I cannot tell.
Okay.
Okay, this is the Treasure Island off-ramp where she's coming down.
So the protesters were behind.
Hey guys, if you guys can hear me, we are getting our first look at the heavy law enforcement response on the upper deck of the Bay Bridge, and we're still seeing more CHP officers racing by us. It was quite the trek to get over here from our station in San Francisco. The lower deck was moving at a very slow standstill, and as you can see up here on the upper deck, there is no traffic coming in whatsoever from the East Bay coming in to San Francisco. You'll have to excuse me, I'm a little bit out of breath. We just had to hike up this off-ramp at Treasure Island. And it is definitely it's definitely quite the sight to see. I have never seen the Bay Bridge completely shut down like this with this type of a heavy law enforcement response. Keep in mind, we did talk to CHP only 2 days ago, and they told us they were bringing in 1,000, more than 1,000 supplemental officers in the event of something happening. That's why they are here.
Lena, I'll let you catch your breath for just a quick second. I'll let you catch your breath. I'll let you catch your breath for just a second and talk for a moment so you can have a minute to gather yourself, because I know that's not an easy hike up there where you are. Just to go along with what Lena was saying there about the additional CHP officers, I know Reggie and Drew, you don't really have the opportunity to see, but I did coming in, or really going home yesterday, that the CHP was about every few feet actually already stationed on the bridge where the closure was with those orange cones. So it will be interesting to see as this is on, and it looks like there's a tow truck going by right now with what we can only assume is one of the vehicles that was blocking traffic.
And we should mention, for our viewers who are just joining us on broadcast, we are watching as protesters have shut down the westbound lanes on the Bay Bridge. And this has been going on now for, we're getting close to an hour. Lots of police presence. Protesters say they have dozens of people on this bridge. They are calling for a ceasefire and end to U.S. military aid in Israel. So obviously this is being done in conjunction, or this is being done because of the APEC conference and all the world leaders, including President Biden, who are here and may be watching.
When this investigation continues as to exactly how this all unfolded on the bridge, Reggie, I will be curious to know if the CHP vehicles were already stationed at the closure lane. And if they were, how quickly did this happen to where they weren't able to stop the protesters from blocking traffic entirely? Or maybe they weren't there yet. So those are questions that we will need to have answered as the morning continues and into tomorrow as well. But this is going to have a very serious impact on the commute for people that are coming from the westbound direction. So that's Oakland, Berkeley, Albany, etc. Anyone traveling westbound into San Francisco. And our colleague Lena Howland is on the bridge right now.
Hey, Jobina, if you guys can still hear us, we're giving you a live look.
So we're having a little trouble with Lena's signal, but we'll continue this on our
happening
ABC7
right now on the
news stream.
upper deck of the bridge. We are kind of walking in behind some CHP officers.
Go ahead, Lena. We have you again.
Hey, Jobina, if you guys can hear me.
We can hear you.
We are walking in to get a little bit closer to everything that's going on, kind of following in some CHP officers that raced in to respond to the scene here. As you can see, this is an incredibly heavy police response. CHP told us earlier this week they were bringing in more than 1,000 supplemental officers from across the state, and we're seeing a very, very heavy presence of those officers here on the upper deck of the bridge at this moment. We're still walking in to get a little bit closer, but right now I'm seeing kind of our first glimpse of the banner. We've heard that some of these protesters may be calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. And we're seeing other press kind of running in to help cover this as well. Everybody had to park extremely far away over on Treasure Island and kind of hike up an off-ramp to get onto this bridge. But we're also seeing some of those cars being actively towed away right now.
Lena, I saw you sent in some pictures to our newsroom of the cars you saw being towed. Roughly how many did you see? Did you see any people going with the vehicles, or was it just the cars themselves?
Yeah, we have seen, I believe, a total of 4, and this appears to be the 5th one that we are approaching right now. It does look like they are about to tow another vehicle from here. So CHP is telling us to move out of the road because it looks like this is the main road that they're trying to get cars out of. So it does look like CHP is actively working to clear this, but first they're towing the cars that were blocking the road.
And Lena, we've been seeing on the on the bridge, just a sprinkle of vehicles moving through in the westbound direction. So we can only assume those are coming from Treasure Island, because to confirm, you're not seeing any westbound traffic move where you are.
Yeah, that's correct, Jobina. There is no westbound traffic moving in whatsoever. We're trying to stay as far out of the way as we possibly can without getting run over by some tow trucks here, but yeah, there's zero traffic coming into the city from the Bay Bridge. If you are seeing any traffic coming in, it would be coming from the Treasure Island exit and not from the East Bay. And we're hearing some of those chants from protesters. They're yelling, "Ceasefire now." And we're seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people on the ground, presumably being detained with their arms behind their backs. And I see officers that have like zip tie handcuffs ready to go.
What you're seeing on the right side is where Lena is. On the left side, these are pictures sent in from a group calling themselves Palestine Solidarity, and they're showing you close-up pictures of some of the people who are protesting today. As you can see, some of these folks have chained themselves together, and that is one of the challenges that the officers are having as they, apparently, according to Lena, are now making arrests. Did we lose? I can't hear Lena right now. Can you hear us, Lena? Okay.
Okay. All right, for anyone that is just joining our stream, we are going to take about 30 seconds to get settled here and reset. We will be joining everyone on our linear television, so that's just your standard ABC channel, and also we'll continue here on the stream while we work to continue this coverage of the breaking news on the Bay Bridge for you.
You're watching breaking news from ABC7. We are showing you a massive protest which has shut down westbound lanes on the Bay Bridge and made the eastbound lanes pretty difficult as well, as there is a lot of police activity on this bridge. There are protesters who are calling for a ceasefire and an end to U.S. military aid in Israel. You can see these live pictures on the left side of your screen of the die-in that is being held by some of these protesters. Our Lena Howland is on the bridge right now. That's how we're getting these pictures. You can see the massive police force there. And Lena, how many folks would you say have already been detained on the bridge?
I would say between possibly 6 to 8 so far. It appeared like they had their hands kind of tied behind their backs with zip ties, and they were just kind of standing or sitting on the ground together, yelling, asking for a ceasefire. And then once we got a little bit closer to this protest, what you are seeing right now is we are seeing several people lying down in the middle of the Bay Bridge on the upper deck. Some of them have white shirts over them. And everybody here is kind of surrounded by an entire circle of CHP officers that all have their tactical gear on and ready to go in the event that this escalates.
Do you see anyone actively trying to get more vehicles off of the road, or are those vehicles now all gone?
It's hard to tell right now. We do know that they towed a few cars out of here, but it looks like they have not towed all of them yet. And if anything, they're kind of blocked by these people that are lying on the ground, covered by these white sheets. So it could be an issue of CHP officers not being able to physically get over to those other cars while they're being blocked by protesters. That part is not totally clear. And we're not totally clear of how many other cars still need to be towed and who is just here simply stuck in the traffic.
If you're just joining us, we are going to bring you up to speed on what's happening right now. Around 7:45 this morning, there were initial reports of protesters on the Bay Bridge blocking all westbound traffic. And what you're seeing here on the left-hand side of the screen are live images from protesters on the Bay Bridge calling for a ceasefire and staging what they call a die-in, which is what you're seeing behind this woman with her hands up, that white sheet over a person. There are several people laying around on the ground with those white sheets that have placards on them that say 11,000 dead in reference to the lives lost in the conflict that is happening right now between Hamas and Israel. We have seen protests happen throughout the week. They really picked up yesterday, and now they have transitioned to this larger scale one. The group that's holding it says there are roughly 200 people there. They call themselves a multiracial group of Bay Area residents that are doing this demonstration right now and are wanting President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris to outwardly call for a ceasefire. They are also standing in solidarity with the president of Indonesia, who called for a ceasefire during APEC. This is all because we have these world leaders here in San Francisco for APEC. And the biggest note for anyone that has not left your home today and you need to travel into San Francisco is that you can see this live picture off to the right-hand side of the screen showing that all westbound traffic is stopped on the Bay Bridge, and in the eastbound direction we are looking at speeds well under the limit, so it is best to avoid the bridge entirely.
Some of the vehicles have been towed off of the bridge that were involved in this protest, but there are still some remaining. And as far as the people go, there are several that appear to be detained, but there are still many more who are standing and blocking traffic from moving. And of course, now there's a huge police presence as well. But it's unclear exactly how this is going to end. Go ahead, Lena.
Hey, Reggie, if you guys can hear us, I have a live interview, and we are about to talk to Nadia, and she is a member of the Palestinian Youth Movement. Now, Nadia, tell me a little bit about what brings you out here today, and what is your message to the community or the world watching?
We are out here demanding a ceasefire now. Biden, Harris, and Blinken are all in San Francisco this week for the APEC conference, and they are the ones in power. They can stop this genocide by calling for a ceasefire. The majority of the American people actually agree with the ceasefire. Recent polls show 66% are in support of a ceasefire. That's 80% of Democratic voters and 55% of Republicans. We are out here demanding what the American people have been demanding for the past 40 days, a ceasefire now.
And tell me about how this was orchestrated and why close the bridge entirely.
There was a march November 4th in Washington, D.C., where over 500,000 people descended on the Capitol, and the demands were very clear. They were ceasefire now, lift the siege on Gaza, and end U.S. support and aid to Israel. Here in San Francisco, we knew that Biden and Harris and Blinken were coming, and we know that Biden has the power, again, to end this ceasefire by stopping aid to Israel, by demanding a ceasefire. And so we here in the Bay Area.
The crowd, she's not permitted back here. She's refusing to leave.
Okay. Thank you for your time, Nadia. I appreciate it.
Much.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Lena, can you tell us what happened there?
right,
Was that
we
the
have
police
been-
that stopped the interview?
One of our interviews. That was police that just stopped our interview. They said we're not allowed to talk to any of these folks behind their police line to kind of go back to her place. And we were told to stop the interview.
What's the general sense that you get up there, Lena? Are police wanting to let these people continue their demonstration? Are they working to detain people quickly? I would imagine they're trying to clear this up quickly, but it doesn't feel that way from the images we're seeing.
You know, we are seeing more officers arrive by the minute, and we're also kind of being pushed back away from the scene.
Gentlemen.
And you're listening to CHP officers kind of push us back from the scene, which could mean that things are about to escalate a little bit. We're seeing more CHP officers pull in from the other side of the bridge, coming in with their helmets on and with more tactical gear. And our photographer, Steve, is being backed up as well. They're continuing to push us back, which means this could be escalating, and they could be trying to clear this out quickly, but it's really hard to say what is exactly happening when we're being moved further and further back.
To illustrate the images that you're seeing on the screen right now, on the left-hand side is the western span of the Bay Bridge. That's the last part of the bridge before you descend into San Francisco. And that upper deck is where you should see westbound traffic moving. It is completely empty because, as you've been watching from Lena's reporting, there are protesters blocking all lanes of traffic there. Off to the right-hand side is the backup. And now that it's, 8:43, we are officially at just about an hour of this demonstration underway. So people have been sitting in traffic for this entire time, because once you're on the bridge, and really once you're in the maze, you can't turn around. There's no option for that. So this is disruptive to people, not necessarily dangerous in terms of bridge safety.
Can we just stop for 1 second?
Sure.
What is being said over this announcement?
Reggie, if you can hear me, these are CHP officers that just said we are declaring this an unlawful demonstration. Let's listen in on what he's saying now.
Which could cause significant risk for serious injuries to those who remain. If you resist arrest, reasonable force will be used. Section 409 shall come prohibits remaining present in unlawful assembly. If you remain in this area, which was just described, regardless of the purpose you remain, it will be in violation of Section 409. The following dispersal routes are available. Continue.
So again, what you are hearing is CHP officers speaking on their loudspeakers, asking folks to clear out of here and saying there could be arrests, there could be injuries. They're asking folks to clear out of here, but it appears as though nobody is really moving just yet, except for CHP officers who appear to be moving in a little bit closer. So we're waiting to see what's happening.
This image off to the left stopped is because the signal is a little tricky on top of the Bay Bridge. But Lena is there live, and all of this is happening as we speak.
There we go. Seems like police waited about an hour before they decided to make this move to announce to the crowd
It looks like
that they are unlawfully
taking their banner down right now. CHP
assembling.
officers are rolling up their banners.
Okay.
Wow. And even more CHP officers are walking in right now. You can see them coming in these tan uniforms and helmets, zip ties, gas masks.
They definitely detained that person that was in the view of our camera.
And we apologize for the frozen video again. Signal is tricky, so we're just going to work with Lena. When she comes back, we'll keep going and continue to follow this. So just a reminder for people that are trying to get somewhere this morning, especially if you're trying to get into San Francisco, BART running its normal service right now, extended trains as well. Caltrain, if you're coming from really the peninsula, there's no reason that you would need to take the Bay Bridge unless you use that as a transfer point, so that would still be BART as well. The ferry is going to be a good option for you. The Richmond-San Rafael Bridge is not recommended due to an ongoing SIG alert there for westbound commuters. Eastbound is fine there at the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, and then everything is moving perfectly fine at the San Mateo Bridge. And also, if you're just wondering what's happening at the Golden Gate Bridge, there is no activity there that is blocking traffic.
I'm hoping we can get the signal back because it seems like this is it.
Yes, things are definitely escalating. As Reggie pointed out just a couple moments ago, it does appear the police waited an hour. We saw this first start to unfold around 7:45. It's now a little after 8:45, and things have changed. We're seeing much more people detained, much more vehicles being removed from the area and towed. It seems like they had to wait also for the tow trucks to get onto the bridge. Drew raised a good point that there's always at least one or two tow trucks stationed at the Bay Bridge toll plaza for any sort of incident that occurs because it makes such a huge backup there. But they obviously had several vehicles, so it calls for much more than that.
It does make you wonder what this was all about to close one lane in each direction. If this could be so easily thwarted.
Right. I mean, our colleagues definitely raised that point that if you drove, especially later in the afternoon yesterday on the Bay Bridge, whether that was in the eastbound or westbound direction, there was a CHP vehicle, let's say every 500 feet in that closed down lane in both directions where you saw those orange cones. So my question is, was this a coordinated effort to where the protesters all crossed the bridge at the same time around the toll plaza so that they could end up in that position together? Because to me, it seems as though the CHP would have been able to quickly intercept, maybe not stop, but intercept what was going on.
But apparently not.
Clearly not.
Yeah.
That did not work.
That's maybe something for the planning stages for the next big summit that we have in the city.
And this is, of course, all in response to APEC happening in San Francisco this week. And actually, the woman that Lena was interviewing was from the same group that I read a statement from earlier, so I will just bring you all back to that. The group is called the Palestinian Youth Movement. Okay, do we have Caltrans on the line with us right now? Hi, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Hi, Bart. Thank you so much.
Hey,
so what can you
good
tell
morning.
us about what happened here this morning? Can you just walk us through the initial reports?
Well, yeah, what a connected world we live in, right? So here in the Bay Area, we have APEC because we're an internationally significant city and region. And we've got these two icons, the Golden Gate Bridge and the Bay Bridge, which people can tend to use as communications devices like you're seeing this morning. So that's why Caltrans and the CHP and several local entities in the city of San Francisco have been planning for months for this. And that's why, as you were saying just a few minutes ago, we did have lanes closed on the upper deck and the lower deck of the Bay Bridge, as well as the bike and pedestrian path, except for those folks that live on Treasure Island. So a lot of coordination goes into planning for something like this. And I'll just say it, the California Highway Patrol and the San Francisco Police Department, some of the best in the world in law enforcement. You're going to see that. You're seeing that right now. It's not easy to remove a display like this in a very safe and respectful manner. And that is what you're seeing the CHP do right now. Now, my name is Bart Ney, and I represent the state of California with Caltrans. And so what Caltrans is doing is working in coordination with CHP. CHP's on the scene. They're taking care of things and according to their process. We have tow trucks on the scene that are going to be aiding in the process and maintenance staff that's going to be available so that we can get the roadway back open as soon as possible. For us
Mark,
here
I'm
in
going to interrupt you just for 1 second.
Go
I'll
ahead.
get back with you in just a moment. We have our signal back from the bridge, or I thought we did. Lena, can you hear me? Okay, sorry, Bart. I thought that we were going to be able to talk to our reporter who was on the bridge, where it appears as if they're making a number of arrests right now. And that is what you're seeing on the left side of your screen. CHP and police officers from other agencies arresting a number of the folks who have been protesting for more than an hour now on the Bay Bridge. Bart Ney is on the line with us from Caltrans. And Bart, we were speaking about how there are CHP officers positioned throughout the bridge because there's a lane in each direction closed down for APEC, but they weren't able to stop this.
Well, no, they weren't able to stop this because, as someone was mentioning earlier, it was a coordinated effort. And look, we're a democracy, and we have to show that. So we have to keep the bridge open so that people can cross, and then we have to be prepared to respond to situations like this. It is in some ways a peaceful protest, but it has ramifications. We need to get the bridge back open because the congestion that develops in the Bay Area when we lose a major artery like this has a ripple effect and can affect emergency services in the cities that are close to the Bay Bridge. So that's why we have to get it cleared in a safe manner as efficiently and quickly as possible.
Bart, we're watching people being placed under arrest right now, or at least being handcuffed, and also seeing your Caltrans folks there backing up some what looks like additional tow trucks, and people with zip ties also being pulled away from the scene. So what's the plan now? Because Reggie and I did notice this demonstration started around 7:45 this morning. We didn't start seeing a lot of action in terms of police movement. Now we saw presence, but police movement didn't start until about an hour later. So was the idea to give these demonstrators an hour and then move in? What happens now?
Well, look, I don't want to speak as to police procedure, but basically what we have in place is a monitoring system for the entire region. And so when we see things like this starting to develop, we put together a plan for the most effective way to safely remove the folks from the bridge. That takes a moment to coordinate when you see something as big as this, a chain of automobiles, I think about around 50 individuals. I don't know what the final report was. So that has to be effectively coordinated. That gives them a little bit of time. But when we go out there, like you're seeing right now, we want to be very efficient and very safe in the way that things are being done. And that's what you're seeing.
Bart, before we leave you, is there anything else you want to make sure the people know this morning, especially for folks trying to travel westbound?
Yes. So the most important message Caltrans can give is be safe on the roadways. So obviously congestion is going to be a factor. And that's one of the things that we've been reporting out ahead of APEC is be prepared for potential impacts like this one. We also had a storm coming in. So this is the time that you use public transit is the best way to get around the Bay Area, and use 511.org to kind of know before you go, or Caltrans Quick Map. Be safe.
Bart with Caltrans, thank you so much.
Lena Howland, can you hear us on the bridge right now? What's happening?
Hey, Reggie, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. What are you seeing?
Reggie, do you have us?
I can hear you.
Okay, we are seeing several people being arrested. These were protesters, and they are being arrested. CHP officers are putting zip ties around their wrists, likely for the sheer volume of protesters that are being detained at this moment. We are also seeing the process of more tow trucks being brought in, presumably to take away and tow some of the cars that belonged to the protesters that are near the front of the line that we are pointed at right here. We just heard from a protester that was detained. She was yelling at our camera, calling for a ceasefire. And CHP officers took her away. They did not want her talking to the press. Also, a CHP, or actually a San Francisco Sheriff's Office bus being bussed in right now. And that could be where they are putting the people that they're detaining. We're still waiting to see what's going to happen to these folks, but it does look like they have made several arrests so far. We also saw CHP officers kind of bunch up their banners right in front of where our cameras are and kind of bunched them up, threw them on the ground, and then that's when they started detaining some of these protesters out here. We keep kind of being pushed back from the scene, so this is kind of our closest perspective that CHP officers are allowing us to have. We're trying to respect their space, but also accurately report this and tell you what's going on here on the upper deck of the bridge. It's not clear how many people have been detained so far. It looks like one person is kind of refusing to stand right in front of us as she's being detained by CHP officers. Another tow truck is being pulled in right here to my right-hand side. That's the loud beeping that you hear coming in. And again, I just want to hammer home the point of what an incredibly huge police response we are seeing here on the upper deck of the bridge. CHP told us 2 days ago they were bringing in more than 1,000 of their officers, and many of them are here on this bridge this morning. You're taking a look at somebody else that has been detained. She's being taken away by CHP officers, although it's not clear exactly where they're being held. I can tell you, if we take a look right behind our camera, there are now two buses from the San Francisco Sheriff's Office directly behind this setup, or where this demonstration was. And that may be where they are putting the people that they're trying to detain from this scene. And we're seeing kind of like this long line of people that have been detained as well. We're hearing them chant "Free Palestine" right now. And that's kind of our view of what's happening on the ground at this moment. Obviously, things are developing very quickly. Things are changing very quickly. We're trying to stay out of the way, but also give you a better look of what's happening.
And I did see one of the officers pick up what appeared to be bolt cutters and also a saw, because some of these protesters were connected by chain, it appeared.
And it appears like they are actively about to tow one more car. That's what we're standing right next to. That's why this is so noisy. This is presumably a car that belonged to one of the people that was protesting here on the Bay Bridge and may potentially be detained. Again, CHP is just trying to clear this out so that people can get to work here in San Francisco, or get to the APEC event, get to their business, because people have been trapped in this traffic for a very long time. Keep in mind, this has been going on for more than an hour now. So you can only imagine what a headache this has caused for Bay Area drivers this morning.
Not our first rodeo.
I know.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, but we're good here, right? We're not gonna.
No, you're fine. I
Okay. Okay.
An amazing number of officers out there right now.
And understandably so, given the impact of this.
Oh my gosh.
This is going to be felt for the whole day.
I forgot what this woman was doing. She's celebrating something back there. But, you know, if this protest wanted to have impact, it did.
Sure did.
It really did.
Everyone, if you're just joining us right now, we are following breaking news on the Bay Bridge. We have all westbound lanes blocked due to protesters on the bridge. This started around 7:45 this morning with a large banner that was rolled out that said "Ceasefire now." This is in response to APEC being in town here in San Francisco, where we know President Biden, Vice President Harris, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, they are all in town attending this, along with China's President Xi Jinping as well. This protest is in response to the war between Israel and Hamas. We saw protests happen yesterday in San Francisco. This has leveled up those situations from yesterday. And now in, say, the last, 20 minutes or so, Reggie, we've really seen police officers move in and start detaining people.
Yeah, it did seem like they decided to wait 1 hour to see if this would end without their intervention, and then they moved in. The cars went first, and then they started to arrest some people, and now they're doing both.
We also are seeing this, of course, really impact the morning commute. So I did read from one of our colleagues, Reggie, that they were in this backup trying to get onto the Bay Bridge from the East Bay. They have now turned around and gone towards BART. We do know that traffic on Highway 24 is not backed up yet, but we are seeing westbound 80 incredibly backed up. And Rockridge BART is moving at normal service. And it sounds like we have Jim Allison from BART on the line with us right now. Jim?
Yes, hi, good morning.
Good morning. What can you tell us about BART's response to all of this?
Well, we were prepared for any kind of service disruption that might happen through traffic. And so we had planned all along to have 8-car trains. All Transbay trips are 8-car trains, which are longer than some of our Transbay trips. We have extra personnel at our downtown San Francisco stations. And of course, we have more police officers throughout the system for APEC. And just to give you an idea, I'm looking at the BART Watch, the BART app, the official BART app, and I'm seeing from West Oakland, trains are leaving basically every 3 to 5 minutes. So that's a great alternative if you can get to West Oakland or anywhere in the East Bay, and you can get into the city by using BART right now. We've got more than 50 trains in service, and they're all on time.
Jim, we were talking this morning about generally, up until now, how BART has, or how many people have been riding BART, and it doesn't seem like your numbers really spiked during APEC.
The past 2 days, we have not seen much of a difference from the previous week. I would imagine that when we get our ridership numbers for today, tomorrow morning at 4 a.m., we'll see a market increase. I know that family members in my family have been taking BART this week when normally, because of where they work, they would drive. So we are seeing some people, but we also tempered our ridership expectations with the knowledge that many employers had given their workers an increased option to work from home.
Jim, just to give people some context, if they are not frequent BART riders and they are maybe sitting in this backup and streaming us now and can make it to the parking lot around the Bay Bridge Toll Plaza to turn around and go eastbound, what would you say? The West Oakland BART station is about a 5-minute drive from there? Very close.
The West Oakland BART station is a very close drive from there. The parking is a little bit more in demand at West Oakland station, but it's a huge lot. And then we've got some other spots. El Cerrito is also a good option for people who are farther east in Contra Costa and northern Alameda County. So we do have lots of parking at all of our stations. And as I said, all our trains are on time right now.
Jim Allison with BART, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
If you're just joining us, we're looking at live pictures from our camera with our reporter Lena Howland, who has been there to see many of these arrests that are happening and also the vehicles from the protests being taken away. Lena, do we have any indication of what's going to happen once they have everyone on these buses and the cars ready to go? Because obviously there's so many people on this bridge.
Do you have our audio?
Can you hear me?
Hey, Reggie, if you guys can hear us, we've been moved over from this one side of the upper deck of the Bay Bridge because it appears that they are about to reopen one lane, only the very far right-hand lane of the Bay Bridge. It's not clear if that's only for CHP officers or if they will start letting regular commuters pass through here if they've gotten all of the other protesters' cars out of the way that were a part of that demonstration. You can still hear many of those protesters in the background yelling as they are sitting down with their wrists tied together with ties. We're being moved back a little bit from the officer again after being told to move here.
Lena, I think I can make out what they're shouting. Are they saying ceasefire now, the protesters on the bridge?
Those two that used to work for media, they are now CHP personnel. No, I know. Okay, so I need you.
Right now they're yelling free, free, free Palestine. But yes, they were also saying ceasefire now, just moments ago. So this is a very fluid situation, and we are actually starting to see some of those protesters that were detained being put on these buses from the San Francisco Sheriff's Office. And we see many of those people with their wrists zip tied together being loaded onto that bus. Looking over back at where the demonstration was, obviously we're still seeing a very, very heavy CHP presence on the bridge as they're still working to clear this. Again, only a few moments ago, we heard from a CHP officer that they were trying to reopen only the very right-hand side of the bridge. That has not happened yet, but we were we're going to continue, obviously, to stay out here and let you know as soon as anything changes. But that's kind of the latest update that we're hearing and seeing physically on the ground right now.
It's interesting, Lena, that you said the far right lane is the one they're going to open potentially, because that is the lane that has been closed over the last couple of days due to APEC and where the CHP vehicles have been stationed. We're also getting some new information that Capitol Corridor is being impacted by this, that the westbound Oakland and San Francisco Bay Bridge, due to that bridge being closed, customers are advised to transfer at Richmond via BART to San Francisco, and BART is honoring Capitol Corridor tickets at this time because of the impact. And Lena, if you're still there with us, we have your signal back now. If you can walk us through a little bit more about what you're seeing and what's happening now.
Yeah, Jobina, right now we are still seeing an incredibly heavy CHP presence on the bridge where that demonstration was happening, but we're not seeing protesters that were a part of that demonstration over there anymore. In fact, we're seeing all directly behind us. Several of them are in a line being loaded onto these buses. San Francisco Sheriff's Department. You can see every one of the protesters that were detained. Each one of them is being escorted on. And then we're also hearing other protesters that are just kind of sitting against the wall on the far left-hand side of the bridge, chanting things like "Ceasefire now" and "Free Palestine." So CHP told us only a few moments ago that they are working to try to reopen the very right-hand side of the Bay Bridge, but it's not clear if that's only for CHP or if they are trying to actually get regular traffic in through here right now, but media has been cleared out of the way to get ready for that to happen.
We are getting a tweet in right now from Mayor London Breed that reads, quote, "We are in close contact with the California Highway Patrol and Caltrans, who are working to remove the protesters that are blocking traffic. City agencies are providing any necessary support. We will provide updates when we know more." Again, that is coming from San Francisco Mayor London Breed. It's unfortunate that Lena's signal is having a tough time.
It is. It's a bit frustrating.
Because this is really the most movement we have seen over the last hour and 15 minutes so far.
And you can see on the left-hand side of your screen just how slowly traffic is going eastbound to Oakland. So if you do need to go to Oakland or anywhere in the East Bay from San Francisco right now, please don't. I recommend staying put for a little while.
It really would not hurt to just not leave the house, honestly. And if you really need to, because we understand people have to get to work, school, other things, BART and the ferries are going to be your best options, because now, Reggie, we're getting some more roadway impacts beyond the bridge. Westbound 80, the West Grand on-ramp to westbound 80 has now been shut down, so that's not good news. Also, northbound 880, the transition ramp to westbound 80 appears to have just been shut down as well. So essentially what it looks like is the CHP is limiting the amount of traffic that's going to be able to filter into the maze because of this backup.
And as you heard a couple of minutes ago, Lena report, it does seem like they are trying to at least try to reopen one lane. They still have a lot of, just a ton of police vehicles that they have to clear out of there. They have a couple of buses where they are boarding people who they are detaining right now. I pity all of these people who have been sitting there stuck on this bridge for an hour plus, and really hope that they weren't thinking that, I'll just use the bathroom when I get to the other side.
That's all I
always
could think about this.
I've been thinking about that for many minutes.
Yes.
Because I'm that person.
Yes.
I'm that person right now, actually.
I was going to say, and if you need to step away, feel free.
But I do feel for them. And as you can see on the bottom of your screen, police declared this protest an unlawful assembly at about, what time was that? 8:45?
Around 8:45, about an hour after the initial site.
And they gave people a couple of minutes to think about that, and nothing really changed. So that's when they started to go in and actually make some arrests. Put the zip ties on. A number of them are, deciding that they don't want to cooperate with the arrests, and so they just let their body go limp, and the police officers are either waiting or just pulling them to the side of the bridge.
Yes, and to recap what Reggie just said, we have some audio available of that moment, so we'll go to that now.
Which could cause significant risk for serious injuries to those who remain. Entering this arrest, reasonable force will be used. Section 409 penal code prohibits remaining present in an unlawful assembly. If you remain in an area which was just described, regardless of the purpose you remain, it will be in violation of Section 409. The following dispersal routes are available.
This morning, which was roughly 1 hour after we saw these protesters on the bridge. Again, that audio you just heard was about an hour after that, so around 8:45 this morning. And since then, things have been happening quickly on the bridge. Tow trucks moving in, people zip tied, people handcuffed, people being picked up and carried out. You can see it looks like some folks that are detained leaning against the wall. Again, what you're seeing off to the left-hand side of the screen is our live camera on the Bay Bridge right now, with all westbound lanes blocked. On the right side is what you're seeing, the backup. And it sounds like we at least have our live audio back from the Bay Bridge. And let's see if we can check back in with our colleague Lena Howland, who is there.
Hey, if you guys can hear us, we're listening into what some of these protesters chanting. They're saying, what do we want? We want a ceasefire. And when do we want? We want it now. We're seeing dozens upon dozens of these protesters being detained in their zip ties, and they are being loaded right now onto buses from the San Francisco Sheriff's Office. And they're still calling for a ceasefire and asking to free Palestine, even though they've already been detained. They still want their message to be heard while they know our community and really the world is watching what's happening right now. Now, again, we're still seeing a heavy police presence here, even after seeing so many of these people being detained. We're seeing more CHP officers arrive on scene. One point to hammer home one more time, earlier this week, we did talk to CHP officials who told us they were bringing in more than 1,000 CHP officers, both in uniform and not in uniform, from across the state to serve as supplemental staffing for this entire week during the APEC CEO Summit for extra safety, for extra security in the event that anything were to happen. And this is exactly why they wanted to be ready in case something happened. And the bridge was blocked this morning right before 8 o'clock. So you know that impacts a lot of people trying just to get to work and trying to get to APEC happening right now in San Francisco. A few moments ago, maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago, a CHP officer told us they were trying to reopen the far right-hand side lane of the bridge here, but we have not seen that happen just yet. We're seeing a lot of CHP officers standing in that lane, but it's not clear exactly what their time frame is on getting this reopened.
Talking about how there have been very few arrests in APEC-related protests so far. This changes that a bit.
I would say so. The group that planned this said there were about 200 people there, all Bay Area residents. Now that's according to them. We'll have to verify that information. Not necessarily on the number. It does look like there's a good amount of protesters there, but if they are all from the Bay Area, and if not, where did they come from? So that's an interesting piece to this. And just to talk about this group a little bit more that's protesting, a good amount of them are coming from the Palestinian Youth Movement, is what they call themselves. This quote from them in their release that they sent to newsrooms around the Bay Area says, quote, "We are beyond grief watching thousands of our loved ones murdered by Israeli military. This is a genocide happening in Gaza, and President Biden is hosting cocktail parties in San Francisco right now," end quote. And that is from Aisha Nazar with the Palestinian Youth Movement. They have another statement that goes on to say, "We refuse to stand by as our elected officials pay for and cheer on the genocide of Palestinians. Biden must call for a ceasefire now," end quote. And then, so these are photos off to the left-hand side now that you're seeing of the demonstration on the bridge. On the right-hand side, live images of vehicles being towed away that were blocking the traffic. And if you saw those photos of people lying down across the westbound lanes with sheets over them, they were staging what they call a die-in with placards reading across the sheets that say 11,000 dead.
Yesterday, the big story was really people demonstrating downtown near Moscone Center, especially near areas where members of AIPAC were trying to get into the secure area to get into the conference. I haven't heard anything about that going on this morning.
No, and you know what's interesting is and I wonder if it has to do a little bit, Reggie, with the way the schedule is laid out for AIPAC, because the big events are a little more on the outskirts. For example, the dinner tonight at the Legion of Honor. That's not an area where you're going to really feel the disruption, even if there were protesters there, in terms of the everyday person in the Bay Area, versus the Bay Bridge. That is going to have everyone's eyes on it, no matter if you're in San Francisco, Oakland, or beyond, because so many people rely on that corridor. I believe Bart said it well. It's the artery of the Bay Area to get to the heart of San Francisco. And off to the left-hand side here is a live picture from the Bay Bridge Toll Plaza, and you can see traffic is actually not totally stopped, but I would say crawling. And that might just because people are, if you see further off to the left, they're coming off and they're turning around in the Toll Plaza parking lot to go eastbound and either go another way, go home, or to BART.
I was wondering what that looked like, and now there's my answer.
So that's the parking lot right there to the left where people are turning. And that's also where, as Drew stated earlier, the tow trucks sit. And they sit there all day long waiting to clear if something happens on the bridge, which that obviously happened today, but there's not enough tow trucks in the lot for this.
I just want to make it really clear. Just because you see cars are moving through the toll plaza here does not mean that the lanes are open. They are not.
They are not. They are, as you see out to the left, where you see that white truck turning left, that is the parking lot. And you can come out of that lot onto the opposite side, which is eastbound traffic. That'll take you right back into the maze and toward either BART. You can continue driving towards Jack London and hop on the ferry there, because you're not getting through in the westbound direction at all. So I feel really sorry for people that are past the metering lights, because if you're past the lights, there's no way to turn around.
Right, that's it. You're just gonna sit. I hope you have Spotify.
And the premium version at that.
Yes, thank you.
Because
it's going to be a long time.
Yeah.
Because once they even get this open, it's still going to be a while.
It is. And for people that are in the maze too, because when you're on the freeway like that, there's not another exit available at that point. You're there, which is a broader conversation about how you can really get stuck. At any of our bridges, because if you think back to, what was that, 2020, for example, there was a large protest on the Golden Gate Bridge. And our former colleague that anchors the weekend show was like, uh-oh, how am I going to get home? And it took her
later.
Much later.
Right.
The good news here is, from what we can tell at least, and from Lena's reporting, no one has been hurt. No one's in any serious danger. This is a major inconvenience. Police are now calling it unlawful, what they're doing, blocking the roadway, which is why you're seeing people handcuffed and put in zip ties.
And the most dangerous time is when they start to protest, because that's when people don't know what's going on, and it could potentially get into a crash once they see the brake lights hit.
Yes.
So we haven't heard of any crashes on the Bay Bridge, and I'm thankful for that.
Yes, that is really good news. Also, it's important to know if, say, you were trying to drive somewhere else around the East Bay, particularly in Oakland, the West Grand on-ramp to westbound 80 has been shut down, and also the northbound 880 transition ramp to 880 has been closed, and that can create a very large backup along 880, say as you are approaching the Coliseum, coming out of San Leandro. That whole area can get jammed too. So this is a ripple effect that is going to affect, I'd say, much of the East Bay until probably the afternoon at the very least, because it's pretty bad, this backup. Now we are seeing something new here. This pickup truck is moving. And now I'm wondering, is that a civilian vehicle? Because that didn't look like your standard work vehicle, but someone did just move around.
This doesn't affect as many people, but we did get a note that folks who are taking the Capitol corridor this morning, because they would usually get off like in Emeryville, right, and then take a bus over the Bay Bridge to San Francisco. That can't happen right now, so they are on BART honoring tickets from the Capitol corridor. I am not the traffic expert, but I think I got that right.
You did. You got it, Brent.
As someone who has done that before, I understand that transfer process.
You've been doing it this morning with traffic. Yes, absolutely. And it is a little tricky to understand if this is not a part of your normal commute. But the thing that is easy to understand is that the westbound lanes of the Bay Bridge are closed. And
the eastbound lanes are not great.
Not good at all. So don't think because you're coming out of San Francisco that this is going to be some sort of easy feat. And I have, I believe, our colleague Lena Howland on the phone here with us because it's been a little tricky to get to her. So Lena, what are you hearing and seeing there?
Hey, Jovina, if you can hear us now, I'm through my cell phone and not through our big camera, so hopefully you're getting a little better. Right now we're taking a look at the lane that CHP said they are trying to reopen eventually. However, it's just not clear when that's going to happen. It does appear as though they have a tow truck in that lane and they're trying to tow another car, presumably belonging to one of the protesters that was a part of this demonstration. I know that we've been talking about how there may have been upwards of 200 protesters here. So that makes us wonder how many protesters left their cars on the bridge. We've seen more than a dozen cars already be towed away, and we've seen dozens of protesters detained with their wrists being zip tied together in sort of makeshift handcuffs. Again, the reason why these folks are out here protesting during the week of APEC is because they are calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. They do not want to just see a humanitarian pause. They do not want war whatsoever. This is their message to world leaders that are here for APEC. They want to see a ceasefire, and to get their message across, they decided to block the Bay Bridge right before 8 o'clock this morning to block people from first getting into the APEC CEO summit, but second, just regular people going to work in San Francisco. Everyone was blocked trying to drive across the Bay Bridge this morning. It's still a very, very active scene out here right now. As you can see all around us, there's an incredibly heavy CHP presence. We're seeing many deputies from the San Francisco Sheriff's Office. What we're showing you right now is 2 buses that were brought in from the San Francisco Sheriff's Office, and they're escorting each protester individually that was detained onto these buses, where they will likely be taken to jail from here. However, it's not totally clear and it's not totally clear on the timing of this. I know the number one question people watching want to know is, when is this going to reopen? That's what every single person on this bridge is asking at this moment. And right now, CHP officers don't have a clear answer, and they're not giving us one at this moment. They just said, we're trying to reopen the far right-hand lane soon. We have to stay out of the way because of it. But at this point in time, that lane is still blocked by a tow truck, presumably trying to get a protester's car out of the way. We have still been seeing more arrests happen. So the people you're seeing over at the buses, they may not be the only ones. We've seen a couple more being taken away in zip ties from the scene where the demonstration was just here in the past minutes.
Now, Lena, let me ask you about that lane that they're working to reopen. You said the far right lane. Is there any indication, because that was the lane that was closed the last couple of days because of APEC, is that something that they want to open to regular traffic now?
We had the same exact question to the CHP spokesman that we talked to. He said that wasn't quite clear, so we don't know if they're just trying to reopen it specifically for the emergency first responders that are out here, because as you all know, there are very many CHP officers and police and sheriff's deputies on this bridge right now. So it would seem like that might be left open for the first responders first. But again, we still don't know if, they're trying to let regular commuters in through first. But I think it seems like they need to get these third cars out of the way before anybody can pass.
I see. Okay. And how would you measure the progress right now in terms of them detaining the demonstrators? Would it appear that most people are gone? Are they about halfway? What do you think from your view?
I would say it's hard to tell, but from our perspective, it looks like the majority of those that were a part of the demonstration are over here at these buses from the San Francisco Sheriff's Office. We were pushed back very far away from where the demonstration was happening while they were making arrests. But I mean, just turning around, looking at this scene, I'm seeing another person being detained and walked towards us. They're walking towards these buses from the Sheriff's Office. So we know these arrests are still happening right now. That's what we're still seeing actively happening. We're not seeing dozens happening at a time, but it's like one or two every few minutes. We're seeing two more coming through right now. So this is still a very active situation, and it has not resolved yet.
The other interesting note you made was talking about the amount of cars involved. So we obviously saw the main row of cars blocking traffic, but did I understand correctly that there's the belief that there could be other cars essentially abandoned within the backup?
That could be a possibility. We've been talking all morning how there could be upwards of 200 people physically that were a part of that demonstration, and it's not clear how many cars they drove in. It's not clear how many of those that were detained left their cars physically parked on the bridge. Obviously, they weren't allowed to go back to their cars and just sit in there after being detained. So it is possible we're dealing with several abandoned cars, knowing that dozens of people have been detained from this scene on top of the Bay Bridge.
I see. Okay. And we're also learning here now that there is going to be a news conference at the Bay Bridge Toll Plaza at 10 a.m. for anyone that's just joining us and wanting to know a little bit more about what's happening there. We're also getting in some first images now from BART at the Rockridge station, which is in Oakland, showing a packed train there. So now we're starting to see the effects on mass transit. And Lena, there looks like there's a car moving through this live picture I see here that's driving. Do you know what is happening there?
It appears, I'm waiting to see who gets out of the car. Yes, it appears as though that was a CHP officer moving one of these cars out of the way.
Okay.
It's not clear who that car physically, or who that belonged to, if it was one of the protesters. But it appears as though that was a CHP officer that just got out of the car to move it out of the way, likely so they can get it to a safe spot to tow it away. we're also showing you a live look at 2 other cars being taken away. One that has a sign in the back seat taped on the window saying "Ceasefire now." So their messages are continuing to come out even after they've been detained. They left them behind on their cars as they're being towed away.
I see. We're also looking at some live pictures from the Bay Bridge toll plaza.
Some numbers so we have the correct information about protesters that were arrested and vehicles that are being towed.
Okay, and what time?
I don't have an exact time. They're working on getting the numbers, so
Okay.
it'll be a little bit.
Okay, and that was somebody from CHP that just came over to talk to members of the media here, letting us know that they will be sending somebody from CHP over to come talk to us out here on the bridge in person to give us a more accurate look of what actually happened out here, how many people were detained, and what their progress update is on getting this cleared and getting the bridge reopened. That's the number one thing that they are focused on. Eventually, we're seeing another group of CHP officers kind of move over. But again, right now, it looks like the focus is on these tow trucks moving some of those possibly abandoned cars left behind from the protesters, getting them out of the way.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Lena. So what is the sense now? Can you all stay where you are? Are you able to get closer? Is the protest itself kind of dying down? From the live image we see here, I can tell you are a little further back from where everything was unfolding.
Yeah, CHP officers kept us pretty far away. As soon as they started making arrests, we were pulled back from the scene, presumably for our own safety, but we're still trying to document accurately what is happening out here. But we were kind of continuously pushed back away from the scene. This is kind of as close as they're letting us get to it. We just took a few steps forward, and we're seeing it appears as though 2, maybe 3 other protesters on my right-hand side are being detained as well. So we know those arrests are still happening, and this has not resolved just yet. But again, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know that CHP officer came to you all and said they'd be sending someone over to give some numbers and some insight as to what was going on. Did he say when that would happen?
He did not say when that would happen.
Okay.
He said it would happen soon. He did not give us an estimated time frame on that. He just told us to kind of stand by and be ready for that update. So, that could come any minute now. And of course, we will be here, and we'll make sure that their messages are relayed to you guys and, carry that live.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lena. We'll check back in with you soon, or feel free to give us a call when you have that update, and we can listen in live with you as well. All right, everyone, if you're just joining us here, just to bring you up to speed on what's happening on the Bay Bridge, you are looking on the left at a live picture that it's a bit frozen. We're still working on our signal there, but that is the Bay Bridge, all westbound lanes blocked there, and several police officers. You can see a heavy presence there. On the right-hand side of the bridge is where you see the backup in those westbound lanes. The westbound traffic is not moving. And since this image is frozen off to the left-hand side, I'm curious, are we able to bring in a live picture from the Bay Bridge toll plaza? Because we did want to look at something there. If you see the traffic slowly crawling here, this is a live picture from the toll plaza, and if you look to the left and you see that white car turning left, what we're seeing is a lot of people are turning around because they can't get through, and it does appear that there might be some CHP vehicles staged where people approach the toll booth and are blocking traffic and turning people around there in an effort to prevent further backups on and at the bridge as we move on throughout the day. We are also beginning to hear from our colleagues as we approach the 9:30 hour, which is when most people would be arriving here to the station to work our daytime shift. And many of them are coming from the East Bay and are stuck or taking the ferry or on a very crowded BART train. So this is a picture from the Rock Ridge BART station on the left-hand side that was taken maybe about 20 minutes ago or so. So it's crowded. People are finding other ways to get in, Reggie.
Ooh, it's crowded. Wow. Well, when we were talking to BART earlier, they were saying that their numbers have not peaked because, or have not really shown any kind of spike due to APEC. That will definitely change today.
For sure. And we have Zina Jandali, who is stuck on the bridge. Zina, are you here with us?
Hi, yes, I am.
Zena, thank you so much. I'm so sorry. You've been there for, I'm sure, well over an hour at this point. What can you tell us? When did you start to see things go a little sideways up there?
Yes, so I was in that traffic jam for an hour and a half right at the beginning of the bridge. It was right before 8 when I got stuck. And then I noticed that people were able, if they were at the beginning of the bridge and not quite in the middle or on the bridge, that they were doing U-turns to merge left, take the exit, and come back around. But in all honesty, I was stuck there. I missed my medical appointment, and I took today off for work to go to my appointment. But at the same time, I understand why they're doing it. I really support the protesters, and I applaud what they're doing. Right now, there are thousands of people in Gaza being bombed, and over 11,000 people have been killed. Many of those are children. Every 10 minutes, a child dies, and it's actually U.S. tax dollars that are contributing to this.
So when you said you were at the beginning of the bridge, were you past the metering lights?
No, so I did go past the fast track entrance where they scan my fast track, but I was not quite past the lights that go onto the bridge.
Okay.
I see,
right
okay.
Before.
So you had just made it through the toll booths, essentially, and that's when traffic stopped?
Yes. It was congested before then, but it was moving inch by inch, very slight, and people were coming out and doing U-turns, so I did ease a little forward, but for the most part, I was just stuck in the same spot, essentially, for an hour and a half.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry you missed your medical appointment. Zena, when did you know that this wasn't normal Bay Bridge traffic? When did you start to notice that this is something different?
So I was using my GPS, and I was supposed to get to my destination at 8:30, and then I noticed that suddenly my GPS was rerouting me to go back, take the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, go through Marin County, and then go to San Francisco. And it was strange because I was right at the Bay Bridge, and it was no longer allowing me to take a route that goes through the Bay Bridge.
My goodness. Well, we're glad you're safe, Zena, and thank you very much for talking with us. Sorry that happened with you this morning, but we appreciate your attitude about it.
Thank you very much.
Ooh, she does have a good attitude.
I know. She said hour and a half, but
good for her.
Okay.
Yeah. There is supposed to be a 10 a.m. news conference that CHP is holding, so when that happens, we will try and get that for you.
Yes. While you stepped away for just a moment, Reggie, Lena was on the phone with us, and we did overhear a CHP officer approach her as well, saying that they were going to send an officer to talk with them, too. And I wonder if that's what we're maybe getting. It looks like people are trying to cluster, but our signal is a little spotty. So as soon as someone starts talking, I will stop talking so that we can hear what they have to say. Okay, it looks like we're going to get somebody from the CHP. Again, he is standing in the westbound lanes on the Bay Bridge.
I'm doing it. That's what I'm saying. Hold on. Back.
Ready?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Give us an update on what's happening.
Okay.
First, give us your name.
Yeah, Chief Ezri Beauchamp with the California Highway Patrol, overall CHP operations in the 9 Bay Area counties. So approximately 7:41 this morning, reports came in of vehicles slowing and then coming to a complete stop. Westbound 80 on the Bay Bridge, just east of Treasure Island. This appears to be a very calculated movement based upon individuals having multiple layers of vehicles stopping and slowing traffic with individuals getting out of their cars. We had units here within just a couple minutes, but unfortunately all lanes were blocked, backing up traffic. Let me state first and foremost, we are 100% in support of people's rights to exercise their First Amendment. This is the wrong way to do it. This is 100% wrong, it's unacceptable, and it's illegal. Up to this point right now, we've made 50 arrests, we've towed 15 vehicles, and we're still making our way through vehicles and various protesters. We estimate more vehicles are going to be towed, 25 to 50 more people could be arrested. This is very dangerous. You could have people needing to get to the hospital right now. People are needing to get to work. Emergency vehicles can't respond. Again, it's unacceptable for these individuals to do this. What they've done has put people's lives at risk, has impacted people's lives, and has made for a very hectic day within the Bay Area. We are doing everything we can to process the scene quickly. With the assistance of the San Francisco Sheriff's Department, approximately 250 CHP personnel are on scene. They're making active arrests as I speak, and they're towing vehicles as we speak, working with Caltrans and our law enforcement partners. And I'm welcome to take any questions.
Were you caught off guard?
I will say that we were not caught off guard. This was something that we were anticipating happening. We were here within a couple minutes, but they were planned. They worked together. They brought their vehicles to a stop on the freeway, and that got accomplished within seconds.
What kind of charges are the people facing?
That's something that we're going to have to work with the San Francisco District Attorney. We're going to look for the full array of charges that we can press, not only impacting traffic, impacting emergency vehicles, and not allowing people to have movement. And so we'll be looking at what those various charges are and working together to increase those charges based upon people working together to do this.
How many police officers total do you think are here?
I would estimate right now total police officers among the various agencies approximately 250.
What's your estimate of reopening the bridge?
So our goal is within 15 to 20 minutes to hopefully have one lane open. It could take up to 30 minutes, but as we work through the crowd, there's vehicles that are abandoned and vehicles that they took their keys and they tossed them into the bay. And so we have to tow those vehicles. We have no other choice. Ultimately, we don't want to open the lanes until it's safe to do so for all people, but as quickly as we can, we do want to get one lane at least open.
And for our viewers who are just tuning in and watching her live right now, repeat how many people were arrested, how many vehicles you still have to remove?
So 50 people approximately have been arrested so far. 15 vehicles have been towed. Again, those keys were tossed into the bay, and that's that calculated movement of working together that they did. We could still have 5, 10, 15 more cars to tow. Each time we work our way through the next set of vehicles, we're finding abandoned cars and more protesters. We estimate another 25 to 50 arrests could be made today. Once all arrests are done, we will provide those final numbers to the press.
Thank you.
How far back are you having to go down the bridge to see if these vehicles are still?
So right now we're having to go hundreds and hundreds of yards past the initial scene where we're still finding protesters in vehicles. Okay. And that's what's really causing the major delay. If it had only been one set of vehicles and one set of protesters, we would have gotten out of here very quickly. But again, working together, this group stopped traffic in layers and is making it a process for us to get through.
But if you're going hundreds of yards away, how do you know the people that you're arresting hundreds of yards away are protesters?
So we've been videotaping and we've been watching individuals. And so anyone who is arrested, it will be because they were actively participating in the protest, that we had eyes on them, and that we've identified them as an active protester disrupting traffic.
Where did that video come from? Officers who were in the mix?
Yes, we come out here. We have a video that we take. We'll have to comb through that video to see if there's other vehicles that we missed, other individuals that we've missed. That will be a investigation that we do.
Are the protesters fighting back, or is it civil disobedience where they're just being arrested and peacefully walking with you?
They have not actively combated against us, if that's what your question is. I don't necessarily call it a peaceful protest when you stop tens of thousands of people from being able to get to the hospital, being able to get to school, and being able to get to work. They also put themselves in a device called a sleeping dragon, which is where we have to get out tools to remove that, making it again more difficult for us to be able to make the arrest and to free up the scene and allow people to eventually get going on westbound 80.
And one of the lanes, the far right lane has been closed for much of the week as a security precaution for APEC. Did that closed off lane, open lane, facilitate any of the protesters' coordination in terms of slowing down and stopping?
I couldn't give you an answer to that question.
Are tow trucks the problem to get here? Do you have enough, or is this hard to get through traffic?
We do have enough tow trucks. As you've seen, and I'm sure you have video, the tow trucks are actively taking vehicles, taking them off at Treasure Island, and then coming back and getting more vehicles.
So how many more arrests or how many more protesters do you think are still out there?
Right now, it'd just be an estimate. We believe there could be upwards to 20 to 50, but that's an estimate I'm providing right now.
And the abandoned cars?
That could be 5, 10 more. We're just not sure. It's you encounter a vehicle, no one's in it, there's no keys. We have a legal obligation to tow that vehicle. It's blocking the lanes.
And we know you had officers staging on the bridge. Blocking that one lane all morning long. How was this still able to happen knowing you had officers staged and ready to go?
You know, obviously we can't be everywhere of every second at every location. Our officers, again, they were working in conjunction together. The officers we did have on the bridge, they got in front of them and they slowed them down, making, again, our job more
All right, we are
difficult,
to see if the signal
impacting
comes
public
back.
safety and impacting people's lives. What these protesters have done, again, is unacceptable. It goes against what we need people to do. Again, work in schools. They're going to go to jail. Their vehicles are going to get towed, and we're going to press all the charges that we can, working with the district attorney.
There was no way to prevent this from happening. You had the intelligence, you had the manpower, but if they had the determination, there is no way. To prevent this from happening?
Well, that's a tough question to answer. We did everything we could to prevent it, and we will continue to do everything we can to prevent these type of events from happening. To do what they did, and they were successful, and it was wrong.
A logistical question. You said you've had to go back hundreds of yards so far to check each row of cars to see which ones belong to protesters, which ones have been abandoned. Are you going to go all the way down to the Bay Bridge toll plaza? Is that the idea? And if so, how long is that going to take?
Yeah, we'll continue to work our way through until until we have no more abandoned vehicles and no more protesters. We have officers on the Oakland side near the toll plaza. Motor officers, as you've seen, they're working their way up. And so we're going to do it safely. We're going to do it as quickly as we can, and as quickly as we can get the vehicles out of here, we will.
And again, just to clarify and reiterate, the way you're going to identify people who may have been part of the protest and may have just versus someone just stuck in traffic is through video?
Well, I don't want to say just video. It's all of these officers we have on scene that we've put eyes on the individual protesters out of their vehicles, actively participating in the protest.
So if someone got out of their vehicle, that they could be subject to arrest?
No, I don't want to say that. I understand that people have been stuck here now going on 2+ hours, 3 hours if I'm looking at my clock right. And I understand that individuals get out of their cars, they look around to see what's happening. They're not going to be subject to arrest. It is when we are with 100% confidence that you are being arrested because you were out here breaking the law.
How can you ensure that with 100% confidence?
Again, I know you just probably got here, and I apologize for that. It's because all of these officers that were on scene, putting eyes on the protesters, we gave a dispersal order that they were to leave the area. Those individuals that didn't leave, those individuals that continued to protest are the ones going to jail.
Any chance to get the innocent bystanders to go around, reverse their car, or they're in it for the long run?
There's no way to reverse traffic on the Bay Bridge, unfortunately. The backup is massive, and we understand that. That's our goal, to get traffic moving as quickly as possible. I can take one more question.
Can you reiterate the estimated time of reopening for the far right lane and then for the entire bridge?
Yeah, our goal is in about, again, 15 to 30 minutes to hopefully have a lane open. I wish I could give you an estimate for all lanes, but please, people, avoid traveling on westbound 80 coming into San Francisco. Thank you very much.
Chief, your first name again.
Chief Ezri Beauchamp, EZERY-BEAUCHAMP, Chief of the California Highway Patrol over Golden Gate Division. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chief.
All right.
All right, we got a lot of new information then.
We did. So, to reiterate, they've arrested 50 people, as you can see, or it was at the bottom of your screen. They are looking for a possible 25 to 50 more people that they might be arresting. And 15 cars towed so far. The interesting thing was that he says that people parked their cars, got out, were a part of the protest, then threw the keys into the bay.
Yes. Lena Howland, our colleague there on the scene, is there. Lena, we heard what you heard. What's the feeling now? we hear, what, 15 to 30 minutes for one lane to open, and no idea when all lanes will open.
Yeah, so at least that's some kind of a progress update now that we know they are trying to reopen at least the very far right-hand lane sometime in the next 30 or 15 to 30 minutes. However, unfortunately, the CHP chief of this division that you just heard from said he does not have an estimate of when they're going to be able to reopen all lanes of the Bay Bridge. He said that's because they are still in the process of making more arrests. They're still going through cars that have been abandoned on scene. They said there could still be upwards of 25 more arrests. There could be 5 to 15 more abandoned cars. CHP officers said they had to go back at least 100 feet into traffic, going car by car, to find some of those abandoned cars, which, like you guys just mentioned, we heard CHP officers say that some of those drivers, those protesters, had thrown their keys into the bay either before they were arrested or just at some point during the demonstration. And we also saw many of those cars have signs on them inside against one of those windows that said ceasefire now. That's the reason why many of these protesters were blocking this bridge in the first place during this week of the APEC CEO summit. While we do have so many world leaders here physically, including President Biden, they want to make sure world leaders are listening to what's going on here. They're calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, and they do not want to see just a humanitarian pause. So that's kind of the gist of what we just heard from CHP officers. Again, 50 people have been arrested so far, and they are expecting more arrests to be made here in the next few hours, but we still don't have a clear estimate of when all lanes of this bridge will reopen. But hopefully in the next 15 to 30 minutes, we will see some movement on the very far right-hand lane of the bridge. However, it's still being blocked by CHP officers right now. So that's kind of the gist of what we are hearing and what we are seeing on the ground now on the upper deck of the Bay Bridge.
You asked him if this plan essentially didn't work, or why it didn't work, to have one lane closed and the CHP have a presence on the bridge during the entire conference. And what was his answer?
I mean, I asked that question to try to hold them accountable, because they said they were having CHP officers staging in that one open lane. We are seeing one driver being escorted out. It's unclear who that person is, but one car, actually multiple cars, are being escorted out right now. We're seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 cars driven by, it appears, regular people, not CHP drivers. So that was 4 or 5 cars that were just escorted out by CHP officers.
It's a good sign.
That has the potential to be some good news. Yes. I mean, to kind of go into some additional details there, as CHP officers said, they have 250 law enforcement officers on the bridge right now. That explains why we've seen such a huge response, and that includes the people on the eastbound side too. We're seeing some motorcycles, and these look like regular people making their way through, so that's good news. Maybe that 15 minutes came a little sooner for them. I would hope so. We also learned something kind of interesting, that the police departments, in addition to, there's cameras on the bridge itself, were apparently filming people in the crowd to see whether or not they were participating in the protest, and we'll use that video to identify suspects as well, which is interesting. And also that this was a coordinated event. According to police, they had anticipated something like this, and I did hear Alina's question to the officer, and the response that I gather from him is essentially they did what they could. He said that the officers were there when they saw these people start slowing down, so they kind of cut them off to slow them further so they didn't get too far onto the bridge. Because that is true, they could have gone a lot further. They could have stopped inside the tunnel or past the tunnel so that they had the entire bridge blocked. They didn't even make it all the way up before they seemed to have been clued off that something was happening.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Lena, we can hear you and see you again.
Hey, yeah, so we are seeing a long line of motorcycles being escorted out right now. It does appear that these folks are hopefully being allowed off the bridge any minute now. We're going to approach a couple of these drivers here in just a moment, but trying not to get in CHP's way while they're working to clear these folks out. Right before we saw this line of motorcycles being escorted up here by CHP, we saw about 5 or 6 regular cars being driven by regular people being escorted out. So hopefully that's our early sign of people just starting to being let off of this bridge.
And Lena, what is it that they are waiting on now? Is someone holding them up so that they can't drive all the way off the bridge?
Yeah, they are being held up by, it looks like 3 CHP officers on their motorcycles. They were told to follow them. And I can see the officer in front just waved his hand. He's putting up kind of like the 1-minute signal. And all of these drivers, they all have their engines running. They appear to be about to be escorted off this bridge. And everybody looks like they are very, very anxiously awaiting this. I mean, keep in mind, a lot of these people may have been stuck on this bridge for more than 2 hours now. And we've all been stuck in traffic on the bridge before, but nothing quite of this magnitude, with the entire bridge completely shut down heading into San Francisco at rush hour, especially on a morning when we have the APEC CEO Summit in town. We have several world leaders in town, including President Biden. So this is a big deal. We do know CHP officers said they are working to make more arrests. Right now, they're also working to go through a lot of the cars still parked on the bridge. And we're finally seeing these motorcyclists being escorted off the bridge by CHP officers. So again, that's our second sign of good progress happening now. Live on the upper deck of the bridge. Behind these motorcycles being escorted off, you're about to see a few more regular cars being driven by regular people. So we have a truck coming in, another car, and it does appear like they may be opening that very far right-hand lane of the upper deck of the Bay Bridge. But it's still just like 1 or 2 cars at a time, and we're not seeing all the traffic flow through here just yet.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm curious.
It's a very slow and tedious process.
Yeah, I guess so.
Interesting. Yeah, we can only guess, and maybe it could have been the positioning of where they were, something like that. Maybe they got mixed up into the protests themselves, but were not a part of it. It's also possible.
Yeah. That's a good guess.
Right, it's possible. Yeah, it's possible these cars were just kind of stuck in the mix, mixed in with other protesters, and they needed to possibly get to an abandoned vehicle left behind from a protester, maybe parked behind some of these cars. So these are the cars that needed to be physically moved out of the way to get to the other abandoned cars.
Oh, I know this person is happy right
Let's
here.
see if we can talk to this guy. Hey, sir, can you talk to me? How are you feeling?
Well, I missed my flight about a half an hour ago.
You missed your flight?
Yeah, I did.
SFO?
Yes.
Where are you going?
Tucson.
What is this like for you?
Sympathy and a little bit pissed off. Kind of a combination. I understand their plight and certainly admire it, but wish I'd gone further.
Okay. What's your name?
Brad Howard.
Brad Howard. Thank you, Brad. All right. We just got moved away and said we're not allowed to do interviews by CHP officers. I know they are trying to protect our safety and make sure that we are out of the way. But this is the second time CHP officers have interfered with us doing an interview. It's not like this man was arrested. He's just a regular person that was trying to get to SFO that just missed his flight because of all of this. He said he's incredibly frustrated that he kind of got stuck in all of this.
He also said sympathy, and I must say I am struck by the mood and tone of the people that we have spoken with that have had their mornings really disrupted. We've had a missed flight, a missed doctor's appointment that someone took off of work for, and I mean, that man didn't outwardly say it, but I think he at least seemed to be understanding of why the protesters were there.
Yeah. The motorcyclists who went across a second ago are just getting off the bridge because I just saw them go past our vantage point here on our South Beach camera.
Okay, so we're seeing some progress here, and this is the shoulder, by the way, where the vehicles are moving. This is not the far right lane. The far right lane is where the officer is standing. So maybe they were able to get that shoulder open. You see an ambulance there, which does point to something that the CHP officer spoke about, which is that this did impact emergency vehicles in the area, and we don't want that. My goodness, what a morning.
Might be worth reviewing for the CHP where journalists can be and who we can talk to.
You know, Reggie, I'd been toying with commenting on that because she has every right to ask questions and she has a right to be there. And they are not supposed to interfere, actually, so we might have to revisit that. But for those of you that are just joining us, since we are just past the 10 o'clock hour here, we will recap for you what has transpired this morning. So around 7:45 is when we got initial reports of protesters on the Bay Bridge blocking the westbound lanes. According to the CHP officer that briefed us just a short time ago, the CHP says that vehicles started slowing around 7:30 or a little afterwards, so that would make sense why we saw those protesters around 7:45. Off to the right-hand side of the screen is where you can see images of that protest calling for a ceasefire now in reference to the war between Israel and Hamas. Those white sheets are over bodies. They were holding what they call a die-in, and it said 11,000 dead on the placard over those sheets. This is all happening because of APEC that is in San Francisco right now, where President Biden, Vice President Harris, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and so many other world leaders, including the President of China, are in town.
You see that there are chains that were used. There's also, you see this black, what appears to be a PVC pipe. That is called a sleeping dragon technique, and it makes it harder to separate protesters, even with some of the techniques they would usually use, like, for example, a saw or a, I don't know, we saw like a bandsaw out there, like a portable one.
We did, yeah.
And then they also had the, I want to say, not clippers. They said the.
I mean, they did look like industrial yard clippers. I know that is not what they're called, but that's what they looked like.
Yes. But when they wear the black PVC pipe, then they cannot see
the arms and where to cut. I see.
Yes.
Okay.
So it makes it a lot harder for police to separate them. And that is what CHP was talking about earlier when they mentioned that technique. CHP also was really clear about their view on today's protests, saying that they support First Amendment rights, but they also said, quote, this is the wrong way to do it, and that, quote, this is illegal.
They also gave us some numbers here. They say so far they've arrested about 50 people. They predict somewhere between 25 and 50 more people may be arrested. They towed 15 cars from the scene. They had roughly 250 officers, and I should say still have 250 officers there. The car situation, though, is interesting because the way they described it is that these vehicles all started to slow around 7:30, and there were already CHP vehicles staged in that area. They say this wasn't a huge surprise. They anticipated this, cut those vehicles off to slow them down, so they didn't cross the entirety of the bridge. But there were other vehicles in the backup that have since been abandoned, and in some cases, the protesters threw their car keys into the bay. So that makes it difficult to move the cars from there. And they still need to find them. So
And they said,
that's taking time.
There were several layers and rows of cars that were involved in today's protest.
We have an image from the Bay Bridge Toll Plaza, and this is a sight that we almost never see, Reggie. I have not seen that in the 5 years that I've lived here, which is traffic going the opposite direction of the metering lights. And we do know that the CHP is now staged so that they are blocking people from even approaching the Bay Bridge Toll Plaza. They have blocked off several on-ramps and transition ramps that are not allowing people to get to the maze now. And essentially what's happening is that people are going to turn around, go through the parking lot that is on the left-hand side, and get out of there.
And it appears as if police are arresting more people, although I don't know if these are new arrests or if they're just moving them from where people were prior and out of our sight of the camera. But in any case, more people who have been arrested are now, I imagine, either getting to police vehicles or into those buses they had earlier to be transported off the bridge.
We have been able to speak with a couple of people that were in that traffic. We had a colleague that turned around and did make it to the West Oakland BART station to come into work. We have several colleagues that saw what was happening and just avoided this altogether, and got some crowded images from the Rockridge BART station, also the Embarcadero station here in San Francisco, and how busy it is there. We also heard from people we did not know, like this woman earlier who said she took off of work for her doctor's appointment today and missed it because she had only traveled through the toll booths and did not go past the metering lights. She was able to turn around and go back. And it was interesting to hear her response because while disappointed that she missed her appointment, she was very much in support of the demonstrators on the bridge and the calling for the ceasefire. And it felt as though that man that missed his flight did too.
It did. So that I did not expect to hear that, so that was interesting.
And I wonder, Reggie, if that's something that will carry on in conversations with our world leaders and officials that are here and at least have some sort of knowledge that this is going on right now, because that, to me, is either reflecting the tone of maybe Bay Area residents and maybe even residents beyond. I don't know.
It's hard to know because we don't have an actual survey of the drivers.
Of course.
But in our very limited pool of people that we've talked to, if you have been sitting there this long and you missed your flight, it's hard to get more inconvenience than that. And for him to still have compassion, even though, he did say that he was PO'd.
Yeah.
And to say he understands, what's going on and why they're doing this, that takes a lot of understanding.
Right. I mean, we might have either found the most gentle person in that traffic, or I think it might speak to a larger tone here. And we do know that tensions, regardless of how you feel about the war between Israel and Hamas, are very high, whether you're in favor or not of a ceasefire. And that is something that we saw play out yesterday. And we do know, generally speaking, the political beliefs of many people in the Bay Area. We know how this region votes. We know typically what people around this region tend to support. And we've seen a lot of protests calling for ceasefire and free Palestine, being on the flags. And that's been the general sense over the past, I'd say, 72 hours, but really yesterday and today.
And now we do see a few cars that are in that shoulder, and then a lot of police officers in the shoulder. So it's not like a steady line of cars that are ready to get out. It seems this is going real slow.
Very, very slowly. And it's also going slowly at the toll plaza you see here. And there's some CHP vehicles, and looks like even another tow truck approaching. And that is going to be tricky. I hadn't really visualized that there are cars placed throughout the backup that have been abandoned. In my mind, it was just that steady stretch across.
And that one row, yeah. It is complicated. It's purposely meant to be complicated by the protesters.
It is. They created a maze, and now they have to figure out how to get through that and not allow people to drive through the maze, no pun intended there.
And I don't know if we can take this shot of our South Beach camera shot, but I just want to show people what this looks like as a few people are being let through. Thank you. So on the right side, what you're going to see is something that we haven't seen until now. They've placed police vehicles, every 50 to 100 feet?
Yes.
along the bridge.
Yes.
So to me, that is saying, while we have all of these officers here, we're going to make sure that all the protesters are actually off the bridge and that there isn't a second round of this that happens once you get closer to San Francisco, which could always happen.
It could, and this makes me wonder what the bridge will be like for the remainder of APEC.
Yeah.
Because we have this now, major disruption. APEC doesn't end until, I mean, we say late tomorrow, generally speaking. So I'm wondering, will there be an even higher presence than there already was as we continue on with the conference?
Yeah.
My answer is probably yes, because to be able to let this happen a second time, then it's kind of like, all right, now, what's going on?
Especially if it were to happen in the evening commute, which has been a little more problematic than the morning commute recently during APEC. And, you know, the Golden Gate Bridge hasn't had a problem yet.
No.
So.
But if you're looking for impact,
It's this.
It's this.
But if you're looking for the image,
It's the Golden Gate. Yes, yes.
so-
The picture will be nicer on the Golden Gate.
We're not encouraging anyone to do anything.
No.
We're neutral on this stance.
Yes.
But I'm just saying that I'm just kind of getting into the minds of what could possibly happen over the next couple of days.
Right, and it's not like the city hasn't seen that before.
Sure.
And then if you also keep your eyes on the right-hand side of the screen, where Reggie pointed out the South Beach camera here that shows the western span of the Bay Bridge, if you look on the bottom between, you know, the racks there, you can see the eastbound traffic is very slow. And typically after 10 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday, that's empty.
Right.
Totally empty.
Not today. And understandably, people are slowing down when they get to where they see.
I mean, flashing lights everywhere.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So.
And they're probably slowed a little bit more too coming off of the bridge, because now you're facing people trying to turn around in that parking lot.
Yeah, that's
and you don't really know what to anticipate there. It's strange. And
It's a day.
It's a day. And we have some notes we want to mention, though, just for people that are especially traveling around Oakland. This can impact you. So that northbound 880 transition ramp to westbound 80 is shut down. The Grand Avenue on-ramp to westbound 80 has also been shut down. And essentially, there is no way at this point to get to the Bay Bridge toll plaza if you are traveling westbound. So those are some big notes for you if you're getting ready to leave your home, say in the next 30 minutes and hoping that it'll be cleared up by then. Don't try it. BART, ferry, definitely your best options. And then, of course, stay home if you can. This is progress, but we have not yet seen a true lane open, because what's open right now is the far right-hand emergency shoulder for the Bay Bridge. And if we're able, are we able to get a view from the bridge itself on the ground there with our crew? Okay, so this is the level from the ground. The camera's sitting on the ground, and it kind of gives you a good visual of what's happening. So if you look off to the left, you can see that truck with the trailer on the back. It looks like another van in front of it as well. That's the shoulder. In the center is where you see the Caltrans tow truck and CHP motorcycles all in that area. And off to the far right-hand side, CHP staging as well. And for the most part, Reggie, it does appear that most of the protesters have been moved out of this area and placed on those buses.
It's just real slow. It's slow going.
Extremely, extremely slow. Wow. And now I'm wondering what the plan is for the toll plaza moving forward. They've been able to successfully kind of clear that out, and I know people have to feel so happy to turn around.
You mean people who want to eventually get in there again?
Yeah, so, you know, when that is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it seems like right now what they're doing is kind of splitting it.
Mm-hmm.
But even that is going really slow.
It is. And I mean, they have to because you're going the opposite direction of traffic.
And in one lane.
And I'm sure having to be escorted, and that looks to me like a little bit of a bumpy ride.
Ooh.
Coming off there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we've been riding this road with you all since 7:45 this morning. And we're still on this train with you. And we will be here until it's over. We have officially gotten that word from our management, so we will be staying on until at least one lane, normal lane is open for people to get into San Francisco and get on with their day. I know that this has impacted numerous people. We hope you are okay and that nothing too major has gone on beyond maybe a missed flight, missed medical appointment, missed work. And maybe for some of you, that was what you were looking forward to. But again, if you're just joining us to recap what has happened here and what is continuing to happen, around 7:45 this morning, we got reports of protesters on the Bay Bridge blocking all westbound lanes, calling for a ceasefire. Since that time, around 8:45 this morning is when we saw police move into that area and begin detaining people and placing others under arrest. They towed about 15 vehicles from that area, placed about 50 people under arrest. According to police, they are anticipating an arrest of about 25 to 50 others. And Reggie and I discussed that. The process will be reviewing video from that area. They were recording others in the backup and trying to see who was involved in the protest. Looking for the cars is also going to be tricky.
Mm-hmm.
People have thrown their keys into the bay, according to police. So they are working to identify what cars have been left abandoned and then getting those tow trucks down to that area. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see one of those Caltrans tow trucks moving through off to the shoulder without a car. So it is possible that they may have now found them all.
That's a technique I've never seen before.
Them turning them around on the bridge?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I haven't seen that before.
We have our colleague inside right now with some BART information. And Tracy, I know you don't have a microphone on, but if I can just repeat for people, what was the experience like on BART and what station did you start from?
Rockridge.
Rockridge Station.
And it was about 27 minutes between trains, unfortunately.
27 minutes?
That's not what BART told us. So we had BART on earlier.
Jim Allison said everything was on time.
And he said like 3 or 4 minutes between trains.
Yes, and not on the yellow line. And that is the primary line that most people are using to come out of the East Bay around that time of the morning.
Huh. Okay.
So it was packed.
Yeah.
And thanks.
So we're getting a recount of what the BART commute was like this morning. And Tracy, what time did you start the commute?
I got there probably around 8:45 or so, because I remember you were saying it's been about an hour. So, you know what, I wasn't keeping track of time very well, but yeah, I was going up the escalator and the train was leaving, so I missed that. And then the sign said next train 21 minutes. And then it kept saying 17 minutes. It just kept getting longer. So it really ended up being, I think it was 27 minutes. And the platform got very packed. And then when the train arrived at Rockridge, it was packed. So people were really squeezed in. So I sent a couple pictures in, and I sent that video at Embarcadero. So I don't ride BART normally, so I don't know if it's like that every day, but I don't think so. When I have ridden it recently, it was not that crowded.
Okay.
So it did seem like people got word from us that they needed to take BART instead. So thank you for the heads up.
Well, that's good. I'm glad some people got intercepted before they got in their cars because other people were not so lucky, unfortunately. And if you know someone that is in this backup and maybe they are like Tracy and don't frequently take BART, they can get to the West Oakland BART station in just about 5 minutes from this area. So it's not a long ride. They do have a parking lot. Jim Allison with BART did tell us that that parking lot typically does fill up. There is some street parking in the area as well into the neighborhood, but that's just something that you want to be aware of. But that's the lot that you choose. Of course, there's also a Walnut Creek. There's a smaller parking lot near the Rock Ridge station. El Cerrito has a much bigger parking lot. If you are not out yet and you want to leave from that area, that's another one to visit. The BART stations in and around Oakland, though, excluding West Oakland, so that would be like the 19th Street BART station, for example, or the Lake Merritt station, do not have parking lots available. So that is important to know.
I just want to say this, turning the traffic around and coming off in the opposite direction, I don't remember that ever happening before. I mean, I remember several years ago we had, there was like a Black Friday protest. I don't know if you remember that, but people shut down the bridge on Black Friday, I believe it was. And they didn't do this maneuver at that time. So,
wow,
pretty interesting.
And it does look like more people are now being arrested on the bridge, or at least have been moved to a place where we can see them. So I don't know if they had been detained before and they're just changing things out. But when we spoke to CHP not long ago, they said that they had arrested 50 people and it was possible they could be arresting another at least 25 people. So we were expecting this to happen. And I'm also getting a message from Lena, who is on the bridge right now. Lena, I don't know if you can hear me, but are you telling us that they are about to reopen some lanes?
Hey, Reggie, that's right. Yeah, we were just approached by a CHP officer who moved us over by a lane because he said they are preparing to open up lanes number 4 and 5. So those are on the right-hand lanes of this of the upper deck of this bridge. All media was moved over to make room for this traffic preparing to head out of here. It does appear as though first responders have also gotten out of both of those lanes behind where our camera is set up. So it's clear and it's ready for more traffic to come through here. It does appear as though more officers are blocking that lane, but it looks like they're walking out of it. So preparing to hopefully get some of the regular traffic out of here. That's what we were all told to kind of stand by for and to get out of the way for.
Lena, I'm not sure if they offer this information, and I could understand why they didn't, or if they did not offer this to you, but I'm curious if they gave any sort of insight into what will happen for the rest of the day once the lanes are all reopened. Are they going to have a heavier presence given that this happened today? Will they move that presence now to the lower deck? Because really, the protesters' mission accomplished as far as hitting the brunt of the commute, and that will shift to the lower deck once we get to the later half of the day.
Yeah, Jobina, there's really no doubt that they will continue to have a very heavy law enforcement presence on both the upper and lower deck of this bridge after this event happened, knowing that there could be a possibility of this happening again at any point. That is why CHP told us earlier this week they were closing down one lane of the bridge in both directions all day long from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. during the week of APEC.
Got it, okay.
And that they said that they were closing those lanes to prepare for, in the event of something like this happening. And I believe that is going to continue to happen. I'm sure that lane will continue to stay closed, and they will continue to keep law enforcement out here, especially while APEC is happening this week.
Thank you, Lena. If you're just joining us, we will be ending this coverage at 10:30, so that's in just about 5 minutes. So in the next 5 minutes, we are going to make sure you're up to speed on things, know what's happening, know what's closed, know what's open, which isn't much, and just really give you a full recap of everything. And then our coverage will continue online on abc7news.com, and then again on Midday Live on the air and streaming, which begins at 11 a.m. So we're going to take that 30 minutes here at the station to regroup and make sure that you have everything you need
As
to
far
know.
as we know.
As far as the last couple minutes goes, that's the plan.
Unless
Now,
something
as
changes.
you've seen, things have been changing. Thank you, Reggie, because let's be clear.
Look, I reserve the right to change my mind.
Yes.
Is how we're playing it today. Yeah, so even though we're supposed to be reopening this really soon, we're still seeing emergency vehicles using this shoulder. So it's one of those, I'll believe it when I see it kinds of scenarios.
I am just my eyes are stuck on the left-hand side of the screen, all those people that were just, not at the right spot.
No.
Because we've seen a few cars go through if they were towards the front closest to the protest. Everyone that was behind the metering lights at this point has been able to turn around and move out, which we understand from people that have lived in the Bay Area for many, many, many years that they have never seen something like that before.
Yeah.
I mean, this is huge.
It is, and it just feels like, I understand this is a long process to get ready, but every time we get really close, I feel like
something happens.
Something else occurs. So, and I don't know that they're finished arresting people or not. It feels like every few minutes we see more folks in zip ties. Yeah.
And this is I would imagine that's because it's a really long stretch from right before the tunnel to the metering lights themselves. That's a big distance, and I think that CHP officer kind of reiterated that towards the end, that they think there might be 15 to 25 more, but they're not sure, and they will have to keep looking. They're physically walking through all the cars in the backup to see what's happening.
Well, it's been probably, I don't know if it's been the worst commute, but it's been one of the worst commutes for these folks who are back there, so I know this will be a huge relief. I think the one thing we can say is that no one, as to our knowledge, has been injured today, which is really saying something given how massive of a shutdown of the bridge this was, how many people were arrested, how many officers were out there. And to say that so far we haven't heard of anyone hurt is a real kudos to everyone involved, I guess I should say, including the protesters.
Yes, and I think that if someone had been hurt, that would have really overshadowed the message of the protesters. So I don't know if for them that was a goal of today, is to make sure that they show up, they show out, but that no one gets hurt, because then your message is lost. And then the focus shifts to who was hurt, how, and why.
And who's to blame.
And who's to blame, exactly. And the blame would likely fall on the people that block the traffic.
Right.
And that's what happens in those scenarios. So they maintain their message. They're calling for a ceasefire. They are opposed to the war between Israel and Hamas, and the U.S. really providing financial aid to that war.
And this is really just the beginning of the day. There are a lot more APEC events that are being held today, including one involving President Biden, I'll put in quotes, off campus, meaning not at the Moscone Center.
Yes, around the Legion of Honor.
Right, he'll be at the Legion of Honor. So already there are some traffic disruptions around there, and we will, of course, be covering that when it occurs. But it's just really only one of many events that the president and other major leaders will be involved with.
So thank you for joining us. We will again continue to update this story on abc7news.com and on our stream. Download the ABC7 Bay Area app for the latest updates. And we will be back at 11 a.m. for Midday Live to continue this breaking news coverage.
Yes, thanks for being there with us and getting through this morning. And good luck to all the drivers who are stuck on that bridge. Now we're going to bring you to The View, which is currently playing. I feel deeply uncomfortable.